The President, please be seated. The court is now in session. During today's sessions, the Chamber continues to hear testimony of civil party Am Eun. Questions continue to be put by the prosecution. Before we hand over to the prosecution, the greffier of the trial chamber, Mr. Dao An San, is now instructed to report to the chamber on the attendance status of the parties to the proceedings. The greffier. Good morning, Mr. President, Your Honors. All parties to the proceedings are present except Mr. Ieng Sary, who is present but in his holding cell. Mr. Ieng Sary, through his counsels, asks to be excused from this chamber in the court proceeding for the whole day. His waiver has already been submitted to the chamber through the greffier. With regard to TCW 480, the witness is before at the chamber and taking an oath. The President. The chamber notes the request by Mr. Ieng Sary through his counsel on the 27th of August 2012. Mr. Ieng Sary has asked that he be allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell. Dr. Lim Sivotha, who is the medical doctor on duty at detention facility and who examined Mr. Ieng Sary's health status, indicated that Mr. Ieng Sary is fatigued and has a low back pain, and asked the chamber to allow him to observe the proceedings from his holding cell. The chamber notes that Mr. Ieng Sary, for the time being, has waived his right to participate directly in the courtroom due to his health concern. However, the chamber also notes from the medical advice from the doctor that Mr. Ieng Sary is mentally able to observe the proceedings if allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell. The chamber therefore grants the request. Mr. Ieng Sary is now permitted to observe the proceedings from his holding cell through the audiovisual link for the entire day hearing. The AV booth officials are now instructed to ensure that the AV equipment is well linked to the holding cell so that Mr. Ieng Sary can observe the proceedings from there. Next, we would like to hand over to the prosecution to proceed with the remaining of the questions to the civil party. And before that, the chamber wishes to also remind the prosecution and other relevant parties to the proceedings that before putting questions to the civil party, parties should be mindful of the questions or the subject matters that are relevant to the segment of the trial, which is case file 002/01. Please try your best to refrain from straying away from the confined subject matters before us, and we hope that by doing so we will expedite the proceeding sufficiently. The co-prosecutor, you may now proceed. Mr. Dararatsamai. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Your Honors. Good morning to everyone and very good morning to Mr. Am Eun. I am Chandararatsamai from the prosecution. I have a few questions to put to you concerning the event before 1975. I'm talking about the period before April 1975. Could you tell the court, please, in which particular date you joined the revolution? Response. Good morning. Your question, concerning your question, I think the response has already been made earlier on in my testimony. I joined the revolution when I was very young. Question. Thank you. In the document, you indicated that you joined the revolution in 1969. Is that correct? The document you stated before the investigators. Response. Yes, it is. Question. How did you know, or what did you know about the revolution or revolutionary movement? Response. I think I find it difficult to respond to this flow-up question because I need to be given more time to address this. The President, counsel for Mr. Keo Sampon, you're on your feet. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to you, and good morning to the judges and all parties. I'm on my feet because I seem to understand from the prior question that the co-prosecutor was referring to a document that was translated into French before the co-investigating judges, but there doesn't appear to be a French translation of an interview with the co-investigating judges with Mr. M. Eun, so I do need some clarification on what document precisely is being referred to.
Mr. Chandararatsamai. I am now referring to D22/39.63. This is the victim information form rather than the statement before the investigating judges. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to proceed to next question. Mr. Witness, say the co-prosecutor, when you joined the revolution in 1969, did you still recollect the main activities in the revolution? What kind of activities did you do back then? Response. As indicated, wish to talk more than at length to respond to the question because it's rather broad. However, I will be brief on the point that I recollect, but you may need to specify your question to that particular area. Question. With regard to the CPK, or Communist Party of Cambodia, can you tell the chamber, to the best of your recollection, What did you remember about this? Response. Good morning again. I wish to respond that from the beginning, so far as I know, the CPK started from the selection of people who loved revolution or the Red Doctrine. People who believed to bring benefit to the movement would then be selected. And these individuals who could perform their tasks very well would then be converted into the progressive people or in the progressive movement. Other people would be called the progressive people, but there is another step that they could also be converted to. But at that time, I joined the Youth League movement. Question. You said that the movement was established on the communism or communist ideology. Could you recall the purpose of this establishment of the movement? Response. I do not know what communism was about or their purpose could have been, but my understanding is that at the beginning I could see that at the base, at every household, the community was established. The community to support the movement was established. Each household or family member could have contributed a handful of rice grain placed in a bag and then put in a bucket as a contribution. Question. Did you join the revolution voluntarily or were you compelled to join the Communist Party and the revolution? Response. At that time, no one compelled me to join the revolution. My father inspired me and asked me to ferry letters to help the group. So that's how I became attached to the group. Question. Did you ever see, meet, or contact any of the leaders of the CPK during the course of your work? Response. To be precise, I was very young at that time. I did not know who was who, but I met some senior people through my work. However, people did not show identity. They worked underground. Question. Between 1969 to 1975, how many senior leaders of the CPK had you ever met or worked with? Response. My father asked me to help work with the senior leaders. I often met Mr. Sao Pum. I used to meet other individuals whom I don't know. Question. Where did you meet Mr. Sao Phum and in which year? Response. As a messenger, I met him at his home and office, but they were all in the jungle mainly. Question. What did Mr. Sao Phum talk to you about during those days? Response. Mr. Sao Phum in person talked to me, encouraged me to join the revolution to free our class. I did not know what class was about at that time, frankly. Question. Did you know what Mr. Sao Phum was doing? What was his function? Response. I wish also to make it clear that I did not know what he did, but he was believed to be attached to a section, for example, section 10 or section 20. Question. When did you become member of the Youth League of the CPK? Response. I became a member of the Youth League of the CPK perhaps in 1973. Question. Did you ever eventually become a member of the CPK? Response. I became the member of the CPK after 1975. Question. After 1975, when you became the member of the party, did you become the member voluntarily or were you forced to become the member of the CPK? Response. I became the member of the CPK voluntarily. However, I felt that I was converted into member of the party because they needed me. Question. I would like now to proceed to another topic concerning the CPK policy toward anti-Buddhism. You said between 1969 to the 17th of April 1975 you were involved in the work. But did you observe whether the CPK's policy was ever implemented and how was it implemented concerning religious belief? Response. I noted that during the CPK period, I was a communist, and every communist was expected to do their best to combat corruption. However, by 1972, there was no harsh treatment against the religions. But after 1975, treatment of religion became more difficult or more harsh, I may say harsher. Question. Concerning the treatment of religions, was there any kind of written policy ever rendered or implemented? or was it merely verbal? Response. In 1972, I did not see any particular document concerning the treatment of religion, but I observed this through the sessions I attended when leaders would say in the sessions that we should never treat pagoda's affairs as the core tasks. So they even said that monk was a waste, because if we had to dress the monk with the robes, then we had to spend money, resources unwisely for that, for those monks. So these the languages I learned deriving from the leaders during the sessions. Question: did you know why religion was banned, or Buddhism was banned? Response: as indicated, I did not know the exact purpose of the policy, but we were every now and then told that it was a waste to ordain a person into a monkhood. Question: you said, were you ever aware that follower or believing in Buddhism was a kind of adversarial commitment? Response: in 1972, such thing didn't happen. But after 1972, the CPK had an intention to oppose religion because they never valued the importance of religion in the society. The President counsel for Mr. Kyu Sampon, you may now proceed.
I do apologize for interrupting once again, Mr. President. It's again a question of the speed with which the two parties are having their exchange, and in French, we are always one step behind the witness's answer, following the co-prosecutor's question, and I really must ask for a pause between the question and the answer, or else the interpretation just falls behind. Thank you.
The President, thank you, Counsel. The Chamber believes that the Chamber has informed parties time and again, and we believe that it should be ample enough for parties to be mindful of how to put questions to the witness or civil party by observing some pauses. And from now on, may the Chamber suggest that party who is putting questions to witness or civil party be very careful with that. And the Chamber wishes to also remind the co-prosecutor that the religious persecution is not part of the segment of the trial proceedings. We are now discussing or examining the political persecution and the evacuations of the population phase 1 and phase 2. For that, the Chamber wishes to remind the prosecutor to limit the questions to only the relevant subject matters falling under case file 002/1. The Chamber already stated very clearly concerning the legal and factual backgrounds concerning the crimes alleged to have been involved in the severance, the severance order. During last week sessions, we noted that the questions put by the lead co-lawyers for the civil party, the lead co-lawyers for the civil party put some questions which were not falling within this scope, and we didn't try to intervene, but this time the co-prosecutor shall be mindful and not to do that. Co-prosecutor, Mr. President and Your Honors, in the closing order, there are parts that religious matters also are involved. That's why I intended to dwell on that. However, I may move to the next topic, which is about the medical affairs in Phnom Penh. Mr. Am Eun, could you tell the chamber, please, how long had you been on training on medical matters in Phnom Penh? Response. Yesterday, says the civil party, I indicated that I went to Phnom Penh for 1 year, but I attended the study session for only 9 months, although the course expected to last 12 months. Question. You said last week that you worked in Sector 20. What kind of duties did you perform in the section?
When I was working in Sector 20, at the early stage, I was the youth as well as the physician. So that was the two main responsibilities I had to hold, being a youth as well as the general physician. Question. How long did you work at Sector 20? In Sector 20, response, in Sector 20, as I mentioned, I actually started working there from my early stage. But at that time, I did not really understand why I had to do this work. But the main motivation for me was to serve the nation. But I did not actually pay attention to taking note the time when I started the work. And so if you ask me to mention precisely how long I worked there, I had to speculate on the period. Question. I would like to now move on to the events that unfolded after April 1975. When you were attending the medical training course at Russian hospital, how many trainees were there? Response. Mr. President, I did not recall the number of trainees, but in my estimations, there were up to 1,000 trainees, and if there were less, probably only a little less than 1,000 trainees. Question. Where did the trainees come from? Did they come from every corner of the country? Response. Mr. President, in accordance with the principle laid down by the center, they called those physicians from the sector's hospital across the country to come to be trained. So they actually invited the the director or deputy directors or people who held technical section of the hospital from sectors and zones across the country. Question. Did the trainee acquired necessary medical skills before they were invited to attend that particular training? A response. The 17 hospital was known as the Parties Hospital. It was the 17 April Hospital, and it was called the Parties Hospital. And those who were invited to come to attend the training were those who were practicing medical practice in the zones and sectors. Question. How old were the trainees attending the training course in question? What were the age range of those trainees? Response. In my estimation, they were between the age range of 20 and above 20. They were all from 20 years of age and above, and they were practicing physicians. And normally they actually invited youth from the youth leagues across the country to attend the training. That is all for my response to that question, Mr. President. Question. How was the recruitment conducted? In other words, did they recruit the trainees from different classes, for example, peasant class or middle class or so? Response. Through my own observation, there was no class segregation in recruiting trainees, but normally those were the sons and daughters of the cadres. Question. Can you tell the court the structure of that hospital following the 17th of April 1975? I am talking about the Khmer Soviet hospital where you attended the training. Response. Well, I was not a hospital staff member. I was a training. I came to attend the training. I did not really understand the working or organizational structure of the hospital. Question. Who were the leaders in the organizational structure of the hospital, and how many sections belong to this hospital? Response. There were many sections subordinate to this hospital, but I did not know exactly how many sections there were, but I can recall the names of those sections. Actually, it was divided principally based on the specialization. They had surgery, they had gynecology, dentistry, surgery. So they also divided into general treatment and As for the administrative buildings, there was one administrative building designs for the party members, cadres, and the other building was meant for the place where the trainees came to attend the training stay. Question. Can you tell the court the names of those who were in the management team of the hospital? Response. To my knowledge, Madame Lainsay was the director, and Chun Chun was the person whom others had to report to. But as for others, there were many different sections. For example, sections for malaria, section for surgery. They had the director of each section. So it was, of course, divided into this specialized field of medical treatment. Question. What ministry did this hospital report to? Response. I actually learned it from the time when I was at the base. Actually, this hospital was under the supervision of Ministry of Social Affairs and Health. Question. Can you expand a little bit further? Who was the minister with the portfolio of social affairs, and who was the Minister of Health, and who were the vice ministers also in those ministries? Response. Back then, Mr. President, I did not really understand who was the ministers and who were the vice ministers, but I understood that the person who was the big boss was the Ministry of Social Affairs. And Mr. Chun Chun was in charge of health affairs. And of course, when we talk about health, we are talking about both the medicines, pharmaceuticals, and other medical affairs. Question. So, did you recognize who the Minister of Social Affairs was at that time? Respond, no, I didn't. Thank you. Question. When you were attending the medical training course at the Khmer Soviet Hospital, did you see any leaders come to speak to the trainees throughout the training course you attended? Response. I was not clear as to who the leader was when they came to talk to the students, but at that time I had the opportunity to be sent to the political training session at Boracay. It was about a month or two over there. Question. Did you ever attend any meeting organized by the Khmer Soviet Hospital or Ministry of Social Affairs? Response. At that time, I never attended any meeting, and the reason being was that I was engaged in studying, and I was in charge of the students' affairs as well. I was the president of the students group at that time, and I had a lot of things to do myself, and I had to be vigilant of the activities I had to do. Question. When you were attending the training course at that hospital, did you ever hear the leaders who came to address to the students and yourself when you were studying there? Response. One thing that I could still remember to date was that the training was conducted based on different levels of participants. At that time, I was the leader of the students, so my responsibility was to enhance the students' participation in the training. So they told us that what we had to know what we had to do, and we had to be responsible for what we had to do. So at the time, I did not bother to analyze the reason for why I had to do that, but the leaders at that time told us that we had to mind our business and we had to be responsible for our activities. For example, they told us that we had to, if we were the doctors, we had to study medicines, and if we were also part of the political teams, then we had to understand the political lines. So at that time, I had to be vigilant on every step I had to move because I had to also answer to the party as well. Thank you. Question. Did you know the training courses conducted at the Khmer Soviet Hospital, and who designed the curriculum for the training? Response. I would like to divide my answer in two parts. First, the political training, and the second part was the technical aspect of the training. So these were the two aspects of the trainings back then. The first one, we provided training to students who were members of the parties or members of the youth league, and they had to understand their roles in the parties and what the communist followers had to do. So we had to keep up with the political trend of the country. So we had to follow the lines of Great Leap Forward of the communism. And as members of the parties, we had to bear certain responsibility. And if we were medical doctors, we had certain responsibility to carry out. For example, they said we had to cling to the party lines. Whatever the party said, whatever the party decided, we had to comply with their decision. We must not protest. Thank you. Question. Last week you said that there were instances of arrest of people at Khmer Soviet Hospital. Can you tell the court whether or not there was any information about the arrest of certain individuals in that hospital, and if there was, what did they discuss during those meetings? Response. I would like to respond to this question. I have to be cautious of the fact that I must not step beside the boundary of the current case. At that time, what they told us was that we must not step beyond our responsibilities. In other words, we had to be responsible for our own task. And I also mentioned about my involvement in the parties, and I knew some of the activities as well. And I also witnessed certain the arrest as well. And I also learned it from the words of mouth. People had to sometimes talk to each other secretly. But at that time, we had to be very vigilant all the times, that we had to obey the instruction of the parties, and I did not dare to actually question the reason for the arrest of those people. Question. During the meetings you were attending, did you hear any explanation for the arrest or the enemies of the Communist Party of Cambodia? In short, what did they say about the traitors, about enemies of the Communist Party of Cambodia in those meetings? Response. My apologies. I was a bit hesitant to respond to the question. It was not because I am afraid of answering the question, but I had my personal problems with my mouth. I actually heard about that when I was attending the political training session held in Boracay. Question. I would like to move on to the issue of enemies, the enemies implication of individuals who were later arrested by the party. Did you know who ordered the arrest of medical doctors or trainers at the Khmer Soviet hospital where you attended the training then? Response. Concerning the arrest of the people or the plan to arrest any people, I did not know. I was not aware of that, but I witnessed it. Madame Leng Say, who was the wife of Mr. Tiêu Ol, she was the trainer, political trainers as well as the medical trainer, and she was also a person in charge of that hospital. I learned about the arrests through my own witness of the arrest itself, as well as from my friends who talked to each other about it. Question. You said you witnessed the arrest of people at the hospital. Did they put those people in the trucks, or how did they take those people out? What were the means used to take them out of the hospital's premise? Response. I would like to tell the court about what I witnessed. Those who came to arrest, they actually arrested people in the hospital, and I did not know the people who were arrested. I did not know whether or not they were students or medical staff over there or students from the zones. But what I witnessed was that they arrested both medical doctors as well as the trainees. They put those people who were arrested in the trucks, which was already prepared outside the hospital premise. Not know where they took them to. Question. Did you ever see Mr. Pol Pot, Ieng Sari, Nuon Chea, or Khieu Samphan when you were there? Response. Concerning those 4 people, I have met them, but very briefly, when I was attending political trainings at Borei Kaila. Question. How about in the hospital? Did you see the presence of Mr. Kieu Sampon, Nguyen Chia, Kieu Sampon, or Pol Pot? Did they ever go to the hospital and address students in the training course you were attending? Response. No, over there I never saw them in the hospital. Thank you. Question. Can you expand a little bit further on this issue? I would like to know whether or not there were trucks sent by Ministry of Social Affairs or Ministry of Health, or the trucks belong to the hospital itself. Did you ever see that those trucks take those who were arrested away from the hospital premise? Response. Actually, I never saw it by my own eyes of the truck taking away those people who were arrested. And normally, the ambulance of the hospital was always closed. We could not see anything inside, and I did not see other trucks outside the hospital premise either. Question. In your capacity as a general physician in Khmer Soviet Hospital, did you have to abide by certain policies or instruction by the party concerning your medical practice? In other words, did the party impose any instructions as to your medical practice back then? Response. To be honest, I am not taking sides with anyone, but when I was attending the training course at Khmer Soviet Hospital, in terms of technical training, there was no lessons or lectures about torturing anyone or taking sides with anyone at all, because we, as the medical doctors, we had to be neutral, and we had to be generous to others. So that was what we received in the training course in a technical aspect. Question. Can you tell the court about the decision of the Communist Party of Cambodia or the senior leaders or middle-level leaders who handed down their decision to the people at the lower level? Did the people at the lower level have to abide by the decision, or could the people at the lower level resist against the order or suggest any ideas at all to the decision already handed down by the upper level? Response. I would like to tell the truth. I have repeated myself that I have to tell the truth before this court. I heard the dictatorship. I learned dictatorship through activities, through what I saw by my own eye, rather than I understood the term per se. At that times, I witnessed it myself, and at that times, what the party said was different from what they did. Now, for example, in Ministry of Health, they said we had to be generous. We had to be generous as medical doctors to patients. And they told us that we had to listen to the order of the party. Anyone resisted the decision of the party would be considered a traitor. Thank you. According to the political line of the Communist Party of Cambodia, particularly the Code of Conduct of medical staff, did the medical staff have to abide by whatever decision handed down by the party, or the medical doctors has the freedom to exercise of medical professions by medical doctors? My question simply is whether or not you have your own prerogative in executing or carrying out certain professional activity as medical doctor, or you have to listen to the direction of the party always.
Response. Mr. President, what I have observed, at that time, the party paid greater attention to obeying the discipline rather than paying great attention to the human being or their lives. Question. Thank you. Could you also confirm or whether you had experience concerning the students or trainers, whether people who you worked with before 1975 could then be seen again giving training to you after 1975? Response. I couldn't tell whether it was the case that educated people could be treated differently, but people who could provide trainings were those who affiliated with the cadres. At that time, people could attend any study sessions or training session if they were needed by the party, and in particular, their background would never want to be studied thoroughly. For example, if they wanted someone to become a doctor, then they just assigned someone to study medical skills. And after some discussions, I learned that people could only attend study session when they had some relatives who worked in the CPK or who were affiliated or connected. Question. So you were not familiar with someone who had background in or university degrees in medical affairs before they provided such trainings? Is it true to say? Response. I don't know to what extent one could have attended school before they attended the training session or provided the training sessions. But to my understanding is that those students who studied the medical skills were in their third year. Question. During the time when you studied medical skills at the Khmer Soviet hospital, were you ever instructed to write your autobiography? Response. It was the case that people would be asked to write their own biography because they would like to know where we were from, what we did. So indeed at the hospital there were cases where people were asked to write their biographies. Question. What was the reason behind rewriting your biography or everyone's biography at the hospital during that time? Response. I do not know their reason behind this. But as indicated that the Secretary of Sector 20 appeared to have prior knowledge on this because he used my name differently from my real name because the Secretary of the Sector already changed my name and he never used my original name. And he asked me not to use it again. So I believe that there could be some kind of prior knowledge of what happened before I could be allowed to go to the training session. And but the one I know was that I was allowed to pay some kind of gratitude gesture to my parents. I was called Ip at that time. Ip, not Ip Un for sure. Ip Lon was my other name. Am Un was not the name I was supposed to use back then. My name was changed to hide my identity. Co-prosecutor, thank you, Mr. Sowopati. I have 3 more questions to put to you. How many times did you write your biographies? Response. I only wrote it on one occasion when I studied at the hospital. Question. In writing your biography, did you receive any instructions from the upper level cadres? Response. I did not receive any instructions from any of them. I was just asked to write the biography on my own. The prosecutor. Thank you, Mr. Am Un. This is my last question to you. When you were a student at the Khmer Soviet hospital, could you tell the chamber, please, on the condition of the students who attended the training sessions? How were they treated? And what did they talk to you about? Response. I am now referring to people from the zones. Normally, people did not talk the truth. They never chit-chatted. And the reason that we could not really find time to converse or to chat because they were all afraid. And they did not enjoy any fun time because people were so intimidated. They were afraid not to make any mistake. And people would be sent to their each respective zone after the training sessions. So people would never say anything about their own zone. So I can say that trainees would supposed to only do whatever the parties wanted them to do. The prosecutor: thank you, Mr. President and Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. M. Eun, for your responses to my questions. I would like now to cede the floor to my colleague to put further questions to the civil party.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honours. Good morning to everybody here, and most particularly to the civil party. I want to ask you some questions about political education in Borikela. Mr. M. Eun, in your submission to become a civil party, you said that you were sent to Borikela for a session of political education when you were being trained at the hospital of the 17th of April. And at our hearing last Thursday, what I heard in the French translation seemed to suggest that you had attended several political education sessions in Borikela. Could you tell us precisely the number of sessions? You said they lasted 7 to 10 days. The number of sessions you attended in Borikela. Just one, or were there several of these? Could you please clarify that for us? Thank you.
Response. There were several training sessions, but the sessions were not meant to be for me, but for others. I only attended the session on one occasion.
Merci.
Thank you. So let's talk about the session that you did attend. Were there other cadres from the hospital of the 17th of April there, or other trainees who also attended, or were you there on your own, coming from the hospital?
Response. I have no idea who attended the sessions because I did not know many at that time at the hospital. I was in the training session on behalf of the party who would like me to attend political study session. That's all.
Merci.
Thank you. At our hearing last Thursday, you mentioned Yunyat Pol Pot, Nunchia, Kyo Sampan and Hu Nim as being among the leaders who spoke or who delivered speeches at the political education sessions that you attended. And you said that with respect to Yeng Sari, you weren't absolutely sure about him. So how were the CPK leaders presented to you at these sessions? Did they say their own names, or did somebody else tell you that they were called this or that? How did you know they were called Yunyat, Pol Pot, Nunchia, Kyo Sampan and Hu Nim?
Response. The committee of the political study session presented or introduced these individuals. Before the session started, the trainees were introduced to the trainers.
Merci.
Thank you. And when you were being educated by Pol Pot, were you aware of what role he played in the party within Democratic Cambodia?
Response. I was aware at that time that Pol Pot was the secretary of the party.
And at the time, what did you know about Nunchia? Did you know what role he played in the party?
Response. Mr. Nunchia was the president or the chairman of the People's Representative Assembly.
Is that something that you were told at the Borikela session, or something that you already knew before you got there?
Response. I knew about this before I attended the study session because I was told by the secretary of the zone that Mr. Nuon Chea now rose to the position of the president of the assembly.
What did you know about Kyo Sampan during that political education session in Borikela?
Response. Mr. Kyo Sampan, I knew his position before the training session and also during the study session because I was told by the secretary of the zone that Mr. Kyo Sampan was the state presidium, president of the state presidium.
Alors, juste pour confirmer.
Thank you. Simply to confirm that I really have understood what you said just now. When you were in Borikela, was that the first time that you saw Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Kyo Sampan and the other leaders?
Response. Yes, it is correct. It was the first time I had seen these individuals.
Merci.
Thank you. You said that the political committee introduced the different speakers to you on that very first day of the session. Were all of the leaders present there at the opening of the training session on the first day?
Response. During the commencement of the study session, they were all there together.
Est-ce que Nunchia et Kyusampan ont assisté
Did Nunchia and Kyusampan attend there to hear the speech made by Pol Pot on the first day?
Response. During the first day, Mr. Pol Pot started the opening remarks.
D'accord. Et donc,
Very good. And when he made those opening remarks, did you notice if Kyosampan or Nunchia were present there? Since they had been presented by the committee, did they stay to listen to the speech by Pol Pot, or did they leave earlier?
Response. Every one of them, including Mr. Kyosampan, Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, and the other people on the stage, remained in the meeting.
merci. Je vais revenir à ce que Pol Pot a dit.
Thank you. Can I come back to what Pol Pot said? But I have a general question before that about the way in which the session was organized. Were you and the other participants free to take the floor, ask questions, and exchange views on the questions that were being discussed?
Response. No, none of us would say anything.
Et est-ce que les dirigeants vous posaient parfois des questions?
Did the leaders sometimes ask you questions and invite you to exchange some views with them, or were you just listening to speeches?
Response. During the political study session, we were mainly listeners. No other individuals would be allowed to say anything other than this group of senior individuals.
Thank you very much. Let's turn to Pol Pot's speech on the first day. With the leave of the President, I would like to read out a passage from your civil party application. It's D22/3963. And if we could have the document up on the screen as well, in English on page 7, French page 16, and in Khmer page 005739978. I have a copy here for the civil party if he doesn't have it in front of him, Mr. President.
The President, International Co-Counsel for Mr. Nuon Chea, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The OCP in recent months has adopted a practice that I think is the correct practice, and that practice is to first ask the witness what he remembers, and then, if he does not remember what he has stated before, for example, in his statements before the OCIJ, or in this case, in his civil party application, then his memory can be refreshed by reading him from this statement. If we are going to simply have the witness confirm his earlier statement or have him be influenced by what he has stated 2 years ago, I think this may muddle what the witness actually remembers. So I would suggest that the prosecution continues with its own practice, which is the correct practice, that is to first ask the witness what he remembers.
Avec votre permission, Monsieur le Président.
If I may answer, Mr. President, I think the practice is perfectly valid here. It's not a matter of asking the civil party to endorse what he wrote himself. I want to ask additional questions connected with what he said on the form, and much of which was confirmed at the hearing last Thursday. So, with your permission, Mr. President, I will read out the passage and then ask supplementary questions to what was actually stated by the civil party.
The President, you may proceed, Mr. Co-Prosecutor.
Je crois, Monsieur
I think this is your writing, civil party, so I shall quote the passage. It says, in fact, on the first day of the study, Mr. Pol Pot presented the politics of revolution, during which he talked about the great leap forward policy. In his words, Pol Pot said that in order to achieve this great leap forward, we needed to know who our enemies were and friends were, regardless of family relationship. In order to apply this great leap forward policy of the Ankar, we needed to smash them. I shall stop at that point and ask a first question about the great leap forward. Last Thursday, you said, and in the draft transcription of the 23rd of August, it's located around 2:30. You said that in the training you learned how to influence the mentality of the people so that they could adopt the policy of the Great Leap Forward. And last Thursday you also said that it was a matter of moving from democracy to communism without going through socialism. So I'd like to ask you, can you explain to us what Pol Pot or the other leaders said to you in order to influence the mindset of the people in daily life so that they would sign up to the Great Leap Forward? Civil party, do you understand my question?
Response. I think I wish not to add on top of this because the truth already is well included in that statement of mine.
Une question complémentaire.
Another question. According to Pol Pot, anybody who couldn't make the Great Leap Forward would be considered as an enemy. Did they explain to you how to see when a person was not able to make the Great Leap Forward? In other words, was it possible to know or to distinguish between a person who was making the Great Leap Forward and a person who was not?
Response. In my submission, the complaint, I stated clearly that to identify who would be the communist, who would be the opponent of the CPK. I already stated in the document, and the document is now presented to me by the prosecutor. And again, I submit that this is really the truth, as indicated. At that time, the party had to smash the enemies based on each individual's performance. For example, if I attended a study session, I did not perform very well, then I would be regarded as an enemy already. The party had the view that anyone who obstructs the party's affair or opposed the party, these individual would be regarded as the enemies or the traitors of the party.
J'aimerais que vous expliquiez, Monsieur le témoin.
Mr. Civil Party, can you explain in the extract that I read out in Pol Pot's words? Pol Pot said we needed to know who our enemies and friends were regardless of family relationship. Can you tell us what this means?
Response. That simply means that it was the policy of the party that introduced to us and that we had to follow. Regardless of family relationship here means if we were their children and our parents betrayed the party or were the enemies of the party, I had to follow the party policy. Then I had to treat my father who betrayed the party as the traitor. So if I were to be asked to kill my father who betrayed the party, and whether I dare kill him, the party will test my courage, and I had to by the policy of the party. So the party did not care or pay attention to the relationship, the family relation, or human being relation. They only care about their implementation of the policy effectively. The President, thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor and the civil party. Since it is now appropriate moment for the morning adjournment, we will adjourn for 20 minutes. The next session will be resumed by 10 to 11.